I first started in about 75, and all I was making was wooden items, like, it's a standard S wagon. I hand built each piece and put all the strips on and everything, which was, it took a lot of time. It's a CV wagon, which is the same. All the frames were Cole Shepherd frames, cast brass frames, give them a bit of weight. That's how I first started off, just making a little bit of rolling stock. It wasn't a business, it was started off as a hobby and turned into a business. And that went making timber, and not only timber, I was buying Cole Shepherd's tin parts and doing hoppers and out of tin. So I was putting them all together and selling them off as ready to run. Yeah, I did that till about 84. Not a lot, like, out of all of them, I probably only did 100 wagons out of the whole lot. From 84 to 89, that's when I started on fiberglass. I was a fiberglasser. I used to be a fiberglasser. I worked for Pondgrass building boats for a while. But my main business, when I first started the business up, was model boats. And I used to race radio. They weren't radio when I started, but they ended up radio control model boats. They were international racing boats, like today, you can buy them today. Marbleheads, 10 Raiders, A class, all those international classes. I used to build, I had moles and I used to build them. And I was still interested in trains, and then just decided, making one off is just impossible out of timber. And I did a test run of a wagon and everything, which came out really good. I've got one here. This one's being restored now. It's an ICV van, but that's how they started. They're all cast in one piece, and all the roofs and everything are all added onto them. But they're fiberglass. They're light. They were pretty good. Not dead accurate models. Back then we called them core scale because they were not, that one I used to use SRC as well, just to put all the hatches and everything on and sell it off as that. That's how I first started off, was with wagons. And then after the wagons I went into coaches. This is a fairly recently made out of the original molds. I've still got the original molds for it. That's an platform car. And I used to, in the old days, supply them with fleet bogies. I ended up with a lot of fleet parts in the end. I went into the factory when he closed down and I ended up with bogies and a lot of stuff, and a lot of the tooling, all the press tools, and that's what started me off. In fiberglass, we're in fiberglass from now. I did a K-wagon, the ICV, a little four-wheel water jig. Now this is a later one, which is a more scale one, but that's out of the, it was a scale top, which is out of, that's polyurethane, but the fiberglass ones were very, very similar, very, very close to that. But there was a four-wheel water gin and there was a bogey water gin. I did a water tower top as well. I also did a lot of 10,000 gallon New South Wales tankers, because I had a lot of parts, like the frames and a lot of the ends and everything that I got from the fleet factory. So, I was just assembling and doing them at the same time. With coaches, I did the N platform cars, I did R cars, N platform cars, FG cars, which are the independent cars, and R cars, which are the standard mansell roof ones like that. I did those. They were the only three cars, coaches that I did in fiberglass. After a while, they was very popular. I couldn't make it. I was making heaps of them, I think I did, in 1 year I did about 50 of them, coaches, and most of them were sold off as kits. Bodies fully finished, windows cut out, and although all they had to do was sell them, they came with a roof, with a timber roof, fleet bogies if they wanted them, or Cole Shepherd bogies. But what I realised at the time, people were saying, that's fine, Foxy, we've got plenty of wagons and coaches, no locos. First one I did was the little 1200 class, 12 class, they call it a 12. That to me was a favourite because I remembered it in Sydney. I did the 12, I did then the 13, which is a tank locomotive. I did a 19 class, I did a 20 class. Then I did 24s, 25s, which are very similar, they're the moguls, 260s. I also did a 27. I then stepped up into the 30, I did a 30 class tank, 30 class tender locos, I did 32s, 36s, 50 classes, and the last thing towards the end I did was the 60 Garretts. Now I only produced 12 of those Garretts in kit form. Most of these others were all done in kit form, but occasionally some of them would pay to have them put together. But most of it was sold as either ready to run bodies and things. The ones I made were powered in the tenders by Atlas motors. How many I made, I don't know. I made a hell of a lot, I know. I send them overseas to Australians overseas. I had one customer in Singapore, one in South Africa, and a few in America, and a few in England. I also was buying tin locomotives from Leinster Models in Ireland, and he did me 20 came out rods, Newcastle rods. I put a few together, but most of them were sold off as kits. I did the 40 class diesel, New South Wales 40 class, New South Wales 42 class. I also did in VR, I did the VR S class, which was virtually only the 42 body being modified, and I did the double-ended B class. Now the diesels were sold without a mechanism because I never had a diesel mechanism, but I do know fellows that you were putting Lima, O-gauge Lima mix in it, and because they were taking the sides off springs and that, and I was casting the right sides, and they were just attaching them to them. Right, well that went right up to doing fiberglass. I went for 5 years, right till 89. From 89, I was doing a lot of other things. I think it was HO, Queensland, and a few other O-gauge, but I still dabbled in O-gauge here and there. Up till 96, I was still manufacturing O-gauge, a bit of it myself, but most of it was being done by PGC Castings when he started around in the 90s with Queensland stuff. He took over my Queensland and started doing it. He was also doing all my castings for, he ended up later in the 2000s, he did all my castings. I did nothing. All I did was find buyers for them and pack them. But in the 90s, I did quite a bit, and I did it till 96. The business was actually closed and then finalised in 96. Most of the items in the 90s was made for my layout Bombala. But of course, George would, he'd do 20 or 30 of them, kits and that, because it had to pay for itself, But most of the items, the reason why they were made was for Bombala, my New South Wales O-gauge layout. I can't remember exactly what there was, but I got an idea because of the same things George ran in the 2000s. I revamped all the models because by then they had to be a lot better. The scale sizes, everything had to be scale. Not like these, there was no core scale. Everyone wanted, like now it's even, what we really call, back what I was doing was called fine scale. Today you could say it's top scale like HO, So what I did, most of the fine scale was done for Newcastle, on the wagons I done. I did S-wagons. Now the S-wagons were Osto kit ones. He lent me his mould, his patterns, and I thickened them up to put a bit of space in them. So I had S-wagons, K-wagons, the ICV van I did, PVs I did, HG, there's a HG. These ones, even though these ones are finer scale, I only used the fleet bottoms on mine when I was using them on them. I think Osto kit on Newcastle, I used a lot of his castings because they were true to, these fleet ones are more like British than Australian, I think. Anyhow, but they were they were exactly, pretty, productively their sizes were pretty well right. This is one of the Osto kits S-wagons. It's exactly the same as his. I only had his sides and ends, and I used my frames and fleet wagons on them. Except for Newcastle. Newcastle got Osto kits, white metal frames and things on like that. I also did time. I did the beach, I HD, I did a BD in the bogies, I did a BMT. I also did at this time when George was doing these, I was the only one manufacturing these little hoppers. And they are, you can see there's detailing inside of them, polyurethane frames. This is the earlier wooden frame, of course. But, you know, I George couldn't make enough of them. You know, I was selling heaps of them. But in the end, George had to go into doing, I think he was doing other things in that, and it just got less and less and less in the 2000s, just got less. But what I started was like locomotives in about 2003, 2004. This time, I did them in aluminium, like O-gauge house. Because by then, in the 2000s, the 7-scale fellas had come in, there was X-brass kits and everything. But a lot of my ex-customers and friends that I was into O-gauge, all still had O-gauge house like me, and were running coarse scale, even though some of it was on 2-rail and all that. So I decided to do the aluminium, and I did the 35 class and I did a 59 class in aluminium, all with polyurethane parts on them. You know, I upgraded all the cabs and everything into polyurethane, but they were virtually aluminium, just like, you know, they were done by a aluminium caster up in Yandina. And at the same time, I revamped the 10,000 gallon tankers. I used the fleet pattern, but I did it all in polyurethane. So from 2002 to 2006, all the 10,000 gallon tankers, and there was quite a lot, and 9,000 gallon tankers were done. They were done in polyurethane. One of them, this was a big seller, one of the main things was the little container. At that time I made them, I was the only one making them. And these are all done in polyurethane. It's a pretty close to true to type. I don't know what happened, I couldn't find the roof mould on it. So, but these were some that I had that are lying around that I've been using for myself. But they were pretty good. But I believe it wasn't long after I made them, other people started coming out with them. And that was George Hadley made them in 2000, and I think probably 5, something like that, round about that. But I did ground signals in polyurethane. I did coal for the hoppers in polyurethane. Oh God, what else did I do in polyurethane? I did cylinders, you know, the little brake cylinders underneath in polyurethane. Little accessories to go inside, because what George did, he made a little mould of things that I made up patterns for, and any other polyurethane left over, I just went into them to make up the accessories like that. I think that's about all there was. In the later days, not being in business, just doing it as a hobby, I didn't want to get too big. And besides, you know, there was a lot more manufacturers that come into it by then. Waratah had come into it, and you know, they were all building beautiful stuff. So as far as I was, you know, I was quite happy to let them have it.